You remember Smash 4, right? That one game that was actually two games? Often seen as the awkward middle step between Brawl and Ultimate, but there are things worth appreciating here. Some of the new modes and features went on to be highly regarded, and several newcomers have become Smash icons. But have you ever wondered how things could have gone differently? About a year ago, we first observed a certain alternate timeline, one where Smash Bros. Made different creative choices that led to games and rosters unlike the ones we're familiar with. Now, I'll be your guide as we continue this timeline into the fourth Smash game, a timeline not inherently better nor worse than ours, merely different. Follow me and ponder the question, what if Smash 4 took a different path? Let's get caught up. Previously, we left off in 2008 with a very different Super Smash Bros. Brawl than the one we know. Ganondorf was new to this game, and not a Falcon clone, while Wario and Dedede were returning veterans. Bowser Jr. arrived one game early, with a paintbrush-themed moveset and a final smash that transformed him into Shadow Mario. Diddy Kong brought Dixie along as a tag-team newcomer, and Little Mac was the game's retro pick, which meant staples in our timeline like Rob, Pokemon Trainer, and Zero Suit Samus never made it, and a few surprise characters were barely crammed in at the end. Brawl also introduced a grand, story-driven adventure with a slightly different level structure that had its potential cut short due to development troubles, including a final act that featured mostly recycled content. Got its own separate video if you haven't seen it yet. And due to a few quirks, like no random tripping and less invincible top tiers, Brawl's competitive scene saw less controversy than ours and had even more potential to flourish in the next game. As Nintendo's next console and handheld released, Smash fans eagerly anticipated the sequel they knew was coming, half because Nintendo themselves confirmed it was happening at E3 in 2011. Sakurai had taken a temporary break from Smash to revive Kid Icarus. Uprising still happened in this timeline, but everyone knew what his next project would be. That said, the total lack of news in 2012, other than confirming Sakurai was getting development help from the same company as in our timeline, did leave fans restless for a while. But at E3 2013, fans finally got their first glimpse of a brand new Smash Bros. Title, with cutting-edge HD graphics, exclusive to the Wii U, and... Wait, what? Yeah, in this timeline, Smash 4 didn't have two versions. Sakurai strongly considered it, but after Brawl's development barely held together, he took what felt like the smart choice at the time. And so, Super Smash Bros. Universe was set to release in 2014. Fans were hyped over the new visuals, the gameplay clips, and newcomers Villager and especially Mega Man. But another surprise came in a trailer that abruptly dropped later that day, revealing a character for this game that did not get into ours. Unlike our timeline, this one never had a drought of Zelda newcomers. The Demon Lord Girahim combines skilled swordplay with a wicked edge and some demonic special attacks. His neutral special summoned a line of floating daggers that flew forward a couple seconds later. His up special was a teleport using stylized demon magic with fancy diamond patterns. And his down special was a counterattack where he parried direct hits with his bare hand, stunning whoever struck him and leaving them wide open for up to 3 seconds. What could possibly go wrong with that, right? The following months saw Smash speculation kick into high gear. Were these newcomers a sign of things to come? What other third parties would show up? Did Girahim getting in imply a heroes versus villains theme? Actual news was pretty light though. A few more veterans got confirmed over time, like Marth with a redesign from his DS remakes, and in a Nintendo Direct that December, just like in our timeline, Rosalina was revealed as Smash's first puppet fighter. Behind the scenes, the devs were laying the groundwork for things they hoped would make Universe the best Smash game yet. More gameplay features, more single-player content, new custom variations of every fighter's special attacks, and an adventure mode every bit as epic as the last one, with a story spanning a universe of different video game worlds in a quest to save them all. A quest that would soon become very complicated. As the calendar turned to 2014, the slow but steady news kept coming. Mewtwo was confirmed quickly, keeping his perfect attendance record intact. And as many fans predicted, Little Mac returned with a visual update based on the Punch-Out game that had come out shortly after Brawl. And as another Nintendo Direct aired in February, they were shorter and more frequent back then, another newcomer rose to the challenge. Bandana D's still waiting for his chance in our timeline, but in this one, Sakurai had already worked with a Kirby character from a game he didn't direct before. Still a rising star at this point, Bandana D stuck out as a newcomer nonetheless thanks to his trusty spear. Smash had seen a handful of sword fighters, but this was a new weapon entirely, and he brandished it for long-reaching strikes and multi-hit spins, and a few hand-to-hand moves, like his Megaton Punch Final Smash. Hardly any of his moveset was made up, and much of what was would eventually get added to the spear ability in future Kirby games. But it was a couple months later where Universe's first Smash Direct really showed fans what they were in for, including a release date, November 21st, 2014 in all major regions. Other announcements included a strange board game-like mode with mixed reception, and a brief tease of the new adventure mode that fans went wild over. A few more veterans were confirmed, a visually overhauled Bowser, Zelda and Sheik, still a transforming character since there was no 3DS version to necessitate separating them, and after a 5-second fake-out claiming he wouldn't be returning, Ness was back. A couple newcomers showed up as well. The final segment unveiled Greninja, who was Gen 6's standout starter just like in our timeline. With no Charizard around, the trailer instead featured a fight between Mewtwo and Lucario until Greninja entered the fray. But the bigger surprise was the newcomer revealed at the Direct's beginning. We have reason to think Rhythm Heaven got looked at for a newcomer in our Smash 4. In this one, it got the green light completely. And out of the major candidates, well, Sakurai had always wanted to add a wrestler character to Smash. Big, powerful, and not very fast, the wrestler wanted to get up close and get his hands on opponents, using the fear factor of his grabs to land hits with stuff like his Lariat neutral special, high flying up special, and a command grab side special called Rhythm Whip that summoned a turnbuckle on hit to bounce off of for an extra strong attack if his player pressed B again with good timing. Hey, wait a minute. The wrestler wasn't just a surprise, though. A certain leak had been spreading online that correctly predicted most of the previous newcomers. A follow-up to it had claimed that Smash Universe would also include Shulk, Palutena, a Mii, Pac-Man, Paper Mario, Falco Lombardi, a Pokemon from X and Y, and the Rhythm Heaven character Karate Joe. The leak already had its skeptics, it missed Rosalina for one, but now its veracity was thrown deep into doubt before it could spread further. Though E3 that year further complicated things. Revealed across Nintendo's events that year were the same characters as in our timeline, all predicted by the aforementioned leak, which left more obsessive speculators scratching their heads. Especially when a standalone trailer a month later revealed the same pair of characters as our timeline, from a game the leak hadn't mentioned at all. With Robin and Lucina confirmed, the leak was branded incomplete at best and mostly set aside, other than fans of Shulk, Falco, and Paper Mario hoping for the best. Instead, the fact that Lucina's moveset was very clearly copied from Mars had fans worried, and also side-eyeing the cameo Dark Pit had at the end of Palutena's trailer. What's going on here? They posted in forums and on social media. Are the devs sticking in more lazy clones like Shadow Mario was last time? Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the devs had run into trouble. Their original plan was to outsource development for most of Universe's adventure mode to a support studio outside Nintendo and Bandai Namco. But due to the studio's own incompetent management and mishandled money, it suddenly shut down in early 2014 and could no longer carry out what the Smash devs needed. And with the Wii U struggling to stay afloat, Nintendo could not afford yet another delayed Smash Bros. Game. To get Universe out the door in time, the devs would once again have to make some very difficult choices. As the summer went on, the Smash fandom ran into trouble themselves. In August of 2014, another leak reared its head. A set of screenshots seemingly associated with the North American ratings boards, showing things that had not yet been officially revealed, including several characters. After days of heated discussion over whether or not it was legit, a few pieces of video footage started circulating, featuring characters included in the leak. And the final dagger? A Japan-only Nintendo Direct in late August that officially revealed Shulk with the same moves seen in the leaked footage. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the team had realized earlier in the year that the extra workload for adventure mode they had to take on meant there wouldn't be enough time and resources to fully implement everything they wanted. Now, several complicated or lower priority veteran fighters, who had to be completely rebuilt due to Universe's brand new engine, could not be finished in time. In hopes of keeping the roster from looking too empty, the dev team made a difficult choice to fill the gaps the same way our timeline's Melee did. In less time than it'd have taken to fully develop one character from scratch, 6 characters were spun off already finished fighters to make into moveset clones. Lucina and Darkpick got the same changes they had in our timeline, even strength across her entire sword and different effects on 2 of his specials, respectively. Impa, with her skyward sword design, had slightly worse mobility than Sheik, but slightly stronger attacks. Her neutral special cast a single needle of explosive light, and with no transformation, she got Bouncing Fish, which was considered for Sheik early on before the devs decided to keep her and Zelda together, as her down special. Alf caught a break and got the extra work to split off from Olimar he didn't get in our timeline. Instead of white and purple Pikmin, he got rock Pikmin from his game, which bounced off opponents like purples instead of latching on, dealing less knockback but more shield damage. Dark Samus appeared 1 game early. Unlike in our timeline, she had more substantial changes. Less knockback on her strongest attacks, but her projectiles applied a poison-like effect that made her damage output higher than the real Samus. And Sakurai went back to Kirby again for a super boss from Superstar Ultra. Galactonite's Lance gave him somewhat more range and damage than Meta Knight, but in exchange, his attacks were somewhat slower. With the leaks growing ever more known among Smash fans, the remaining news became less interesting, as they now already knew every newcomer left. A Nintendo Direct in early November included a reveal trailer for Wii Fit Trainer? Yeah, instead of being one of Smash 4's first reveals, this one was saved until near the end as a surprise, which means she was first found in the ESRB leaks, and immediately lambasted by fans for stealing a slot. The Direct also announced another Smash presentation, a 50-fact extravaganza set for November 12th that'd go over most of what hadn't already been announced. Hardcore fans hoped that some of the veterans who hadn't appeared in the leaks, or Falco, who was in the first leak but not the second, would appear here. After all, the first leak had been incomplete, and yet the only characters revealed were Ganondorf, Mr. Game & Watch, Impa, and Smash Universe's retro newcomer was not the one our Smash 4 got. While Sakurai hesitated at first because Takamaru's original game never left Japan, he determined the character was interesting enough to still work. A frenetic fighter with swordplay and projectiles, Takamaru roamed the stage to chip away at foes from a distance with spinning blades and fireballs before going in with his katana for powerful yet risky finishing blows. A frail zoner who had to get up close to take stocks made him less annoying than his archetype usually was, and being a cool-looking retro pick made him the least resented of the leaked newcomers. The 50-fact extravaganza also spilled the beans about the game's adventure mode, a whirlwind tour through different video game worlds as a Melee-style romp with unique gameplay but no story tying them together. Wait, what? Yeah, so remember how the devs had to make emergency cutbacks? They had to shelve several unfinished characters, axe the ability for Mii fighters to be different sizes, reduce the scope of custom specials to only 1 variant of each special instead of 2, and drop the story from the story mode. Sakurai was worried story cutscenes would get posted online and spoil the surprise anyway, so the choice was made to cobble together what the defunct studio had made into a gameplay-only adventure that would still, hopefully, be fun. And while a few characters were not officially announced until after launch, anyone who was remotely in the know was already aware of this last one. Paper Mario had a lot of support in the early 2010s from fans who grew up with the series. Smash Universe took a creative risk early in its development, betting the then upcoming 3DS game would be just as beloved. Well, let's say fans were not happy when leaked footage showed a moveset revolving around what had become the worst game in the series by far. Sure, he still had classic moves for his forward tilt, neutral special, and down air, but Paper Mario revolved around a gimmick where his down special pulled a random sticker off the ground to power up specific moves for their next 3 uses before the sticker was used up, making poor Paper Mario the biggest monkey's paw Smash had seen to date. Behold, our alternate roster. Very different compared to our timeline and the previous game in its own timeline. A roster of technically 49 characters is very close to the size our Smash 4 started at, and a whopping 22 newcomers is the most Smash has seen in either timeline. With such a wide variety, everyone had at least a couple characters to try out. But at what cost? Smash hadn't yet seen major cuts between games in this timeline, but because of unfortunate circumstances, this game had cuts in the double digits. Super Smash Bros. Universe had a lot that fans liked once they got their hands on it. Several of the new characters, especially the 2 new guests, were seen as great additions. The bevy of new things to do also got a lot of praise. Fans wouldn't learn the adventure mode they got was a cut-down version of what could have been until years later, and so they enjoyed the Melee-style campaign on its own merit, even if it was no Subspace Emissary. And custom specials, ironically, got more attention than in our timeline, because there was only one set per fighter, and because of a fortunate dev decision to make the reward for clearing adventure mode on 5.0 intensity or higher be a random custom of the character you played as, people were actually able to unlock them all for their mains without much hassle and take them for a spin. However, you probably guessed, but this game's roster saw some loud backlash for how many veterans got cut. Where's Bowser Jr.? Where are Diddy and Dixie? What happened to Blaziken? He just got a Mega and a remake. They got rid of Excitebiker? He's a Melee legend. Hey, how come Kirby gets 5 characters when we lost solo reps like Isaac? Guys, what happened to Snake? Yeah, that one wasn't the dev's fault. Early 2010s, Konami had issues in this timeline too. And while fans liked a majority of the newcomers, the others not so much. Paper Mario and his Sticker Star heavy moveset went over like a lead balloon. Wii Fit Trainer was used as a scapegoat for daring to be a rep from a casual game whose late arrival quote-quote stole a slot from K. Rool or Ridley or any of the cut veterans. But the worst vitriol was directed at the clones. Remember, Smash fans weren't used to this kind of thing yet, and didn't understand that they took much less time to make than full newcomers. And some very loud folks were not happy. They wasted 6 entire slots on these bozos? You can't seriously tell me Dark Pit or Impa matter more than Diddy or Excitebiker. Why Galactonite? Sakurai's being biased toward the series he made. They really thought we'd want more Shadow Marios instead of the cut veterans? And where is Shadow Mario anyway? At least he's been here before. He should have gotten dibs over Galactonite. It was a tumultuous time to be a Smash fan online. It was difficult for less dedicated fans as well, as while Smash Universe reviewed generally well, much like in our timeline, it wasn't convincing many people to buy the already floundering Wii U, and the system's future looked no less bleak. Could something be done, somehow, to right the ship, or at least salvage what they'd already created? But how? As you know, though, that's just one side of the Smash community. Universe might have had a mixed reception casually, but what about its competitive scene? Mechanically, it wasn't that different from the Smash 4 we know. Despite a new engine and overhauled code, the basic movement and mechanics were faster and snappier than Brawl, though movement still felt sluggish at times, especially the start of jumps and landing lag on aerials. Fortunately, some of Brawl's biggest pain points were addressed. New ledge mechanics meant characters with short recoveries couldn't get edge-hogged and die super early anymore. That annoying dash dance stumble mechanic, unique to this timeline, got toned down, and a full second of grab immunity for anyone who just got thrown or broke out of a grab meant chain grabs were impossible by design. In their place, more throws comboed into regular attacks now. But how did the fighters themselves fare? Keep in mind, we're looking at the first few months after launch, so things were very much in flux here. Despite that, several characters ended up in more or less similar spots to our timeline's early metagame. As for the others, Little Mac's visual overhaul came with a new mechanic. Instead of the KO punch we're familiar with, his Star Punch from the NES and Wii games was less polarizing, and thanks to, somewhat, dialing back the extremes that sank him in Brawl, and an initially overpowered jab, which wasn't patched until later on, that could do close to 30% with literally instant startup, he didn't look half bad. Mac wasn't the only one with a quirk we only saw at the launch of our timeline's 3DS version. Greninja's Hydro Pump had a ludicrously strong wind box that wasn't fixed for months, and his down throw to up air combo, which KO'd from 100% onward, helped him rule the roost at launch. Fun fact, with Diddy absent, that type of combo never got the name. Instead, players called them ninja combos. Because Sheik and Impa also had one that killed. Sheik and Greninja both had him on 3DS at first in our timeline. Sheik may not have had Bouncing Fish here, but she had enough strong options to still be a high-tier threat. Wario and Olimar ended up with altered movesets / mechanics compared to our timeline. The former had more Wario Land influences from Melee, while the latter still had 6 Pikmin at a time, due to no 3DS limitations, but latched-on Pikmin dealt less damage, and throwing and plucking them had much more end lag. Despite that, they both ended up in roughly the same spots as in our timeline. Funny how that works. Meanwhile, Ganondorf got more benefit of the doubt at first, since he wasn't a clone and was merely low tier in this timeline's Brawl, while poor Lucina was perceived as outclassed not just by Marth, who himself had issues at launch, but also to other, stronger new sword fighters. These two ended up swapping tiers compared to our timeline, leaving Lucina at the bottom early on. If you remember, Lucario did not have the moves get stronger at higher damage mechanic in this timeline. Blaziken got it instead, which means it wasn't here to combine with the rage effect to net absurdly early knockouts, leaving him more well-rounded and just mid-tier. One less custom per special made the Miis less appealing from the get-go, but the competitive scene usually forced them to run only default specials anyway when they weren't banned outright, so they started out in roughly the same places anyway. Palutena, however, with her only getting 2 sets of specials instead of 3, her design was seen as half-baked, and her A moves not clicking very well didn't help impressions either, relegating her all the way to bottom tier, at least at first. What about the newcomers unique to this timeline? Girahim quickly became a problem. His surprisingly quick moves despite middling mobility, his neutral special daggers being a delayed pressure tool that helps him approach easily, and remember that counter move from before? Turns out its lingering stun made it a lethal kill confirm, as he was free to half-charge smash attacks from countering so much as a jab, making Girahim a top-tier threat that left opponents furious, outraged, and sick with anger. Our other meta sortie? Takamaru. His speed and projectiles made him the resident pain-in-the-ass high-tier zoner, second only to Rosalina at controlling space. Fortunately, he was much less annoying than Ray 01 last game, so he was tolerated more. Bandana D ended up just okay. Decent moves, nice options, but nothing that really stood out. Was considered the most honest character in the game early on as an average Joe blue-collar mid-tier who works for his wins. The Rhythm Heaven Wrestler was considered very strong at launch for about 2 weeks. Players quickly adjusted, and the perils of being a super slow grappler and a platform fighter became apparent quickly. Fans loved seeing him, but he settled in a low tier quickly. What about the clones? With shuffled stats and a worse neutral special, but a much better down special, Impa became the top-tier threat Sheik was in our timeline. The two of them were often dual-mained, using one or the other depending on the matchup. With Greninja, Sheik, and Impa all strong at launch, this period was called the Ninja meta, and looked back on scornfully later. Players thought Galactonite just felt better than Meta Knight, who felt gutted compared to his high-tier status in Brawl, and started out slightly higher up, half because his range and damage output weren't as bad, half because fans assumed the Super Boss character would be stronger, and confirmation bias did its thing. Elf's rock Pikmin and their higher durability and shield pressure made him seem better than Olimar at first, though the gap between them would shrink over time. Meanwhile, remember Dark Samus and her damage over time effects? Well, they weren't very good. Maybe an overreaction to Olimar's absurd damage racking in Brawl, and with her having weaker stats elsewhere, this clone fell all the way to bottom tier. And Paper Mario wasn't well liked competitively either, since his sticker buffs only worked for a few uses, and since the sticker you got each time was completely random, his moveset was too inconsistent and luck-based to be a serious threat. And since the rest of his kit was underpowered to account for stickers, he wound up a mediocre character outside of freak RNG moments. At least they made for some crazy Twitch clips sometimes. Overall, Smash Universe's tier list in early 2015 looked something like this. And you thought Brawl's tier list was different in this timeline. What might this look like a year or two down the road? What shifts could happen in the metagame? I suppose we'll just have to see. This alternate timeline's come a long way, huh? All the changes from before have butterfly affected into something familiar, yet completely different. Imagine that, a timeline where the fourth Smash game had a massive class of newcomers at the cost of a lot of cut veterans. Where the Zelda newcomer drought never happened, but Bowser Jr. got cut from the game that introduced him in our timeline. Where fans were clamoring for more Metroid and Fire Emblem newcomers, just not those stupid clones, while glaring at the special treatment Kirby was getting. And where a Mario spin-off character got to join the fight, and a lot of fans really wished he hadn't. But unlike the first three Smash games, Universe's story isn't finished yet. A Nintendo Direct in February 2015 formally revealed the quote-quote secret characters that everyone already knew about by then, but followed it up with an actual surprise. Super Smash Bros. Universe was getting DLC. How will that play out in this alternate timeline? Which of the many cut veterans will find their way back? Will the newcomers be different from those in our timeline? Will balance patches help smooth out the early metagame's problems? And maybe, just maybe, will these all help turn the game's reputation more broadly positive and help right the ship for the Wii U before it's too late? That is a story for another time. Thanks to the following for helping out with this video. Shout out to my channel supporters for continuing to lend their, well, support. And if you haven't already, check out the previous episodes in this series. They're pretty good, in my biased opinion. So, until next time, settle it in Smash.